This is Anchor Your Retirement with Barb Gulin from Safe Harbor Financial Planning Group. When a part of your financial strategy is out of tune, your long-term goals, your retirement savings, and your legacy can all suffer. With many years of experience in the financial industry, Barb Gulin provides her clients and prospects the information they need regarding Social Security, retirement income planning, wealth management, and much more. Listen in as we address your financial concerns and provide helpful strategies to put you on the path to achieving your retirement goals. And now here is Anchor Your Retirement with Barb Gulin.
Welcome to the Anchor Your Retirement podcast. I'm your host, Barb Gulin, and hanging out with me in the studio today is my buddy and pal, Tony Shore. How you doing, Tony?
I'm doing great, Barbara. Great to be here with you once again. And it was good to see you this week. We got to hang out in person a bit at a big financial conference where they brought in top advisors from all over the country and top financial experts and investment people to talk about financial investing. And you were one of the top advisors that were asked to go to this event. And so I think that's really neat. And it's great to see how you are constantly updating what you do and listening to what's going on out there, talking to other financial people about what's happening and what we can expect in the future, right?
Well, you know, the only thing constant in life is change.
Yeah.
So, and I always welcome the opportunity to get to see other successful people. And, you know, my fangirl moments were I actually got my picture with Brian Belsky and with Steve Scaramucci while we were there. Regardless of what your politics are, it's kind of fun to get those pictures taken. And you found out something fun about me this week.
What did I find out about you? Barbara, every week I discover new things about you that are fun and exciting. So every single time I talk to you, I see you, or we hang out, I always find something exciting about you. But what was it this week?
I told you how I got my name.
That's right. Oh, my goodness, Barbara. Yeah, and that directly relates to my hobby and passions because I told you I am a huge Beach Boys fan. And for a while I ran a small acoustic folk record company called Silent Planet Records, and we put out a tribute to Brian Wilson's songwriting called Making God Smile. And cool. I got to work alongside Brian and his management, got to see him on his tour, the Smile Tour, and hang out backstage with him. My son, who was very young at the time, got to go backstage and meet Brian Wilson. And Brian asked him, what was your favorite song that I played tonight? Which one did you like the best? And he looked at Brian Wilson and he said, Barbara Ann. And Brian leans in and he goes, that's my favorite too.
I'm pretty partial to it.
Yeah. That's a great song. That's one of my favorite Beach Boys songs. That and Good Vibrations, I think, are their two best.
But Barbara Ann beats the heck out of David Michael, which is what they had picked for me. That would have been confusing.
Oh, yeah. And the Beach Boys don't have a song named David Michael.
They don't.
But they named you. So they had a name picked out for a boy. And on the way to the hospital to have what they thought was going to be a boy, they heard Barbara Ann by the Beach Boys on the radio, right?
Yep.
Is that the story?
It is. And they figured, you know, that's when they looked at each other and said, what if it's a girl?
Exactly.
Because, you know, in Italian families, it's a rule. The firstborn child has to be a boy.
Well, yeah.
Oops.
It reminds me of a great quote. Man plans, God laughs. Right? Yeah.
I think he had a belly laugh on this one. Yeah. For sure.
I love how we like to say things like that. And then God's like, nope, not up to you.
Well, you know, but I was the first one in 4 generations to be born as a girl on my dad's side as the oldest child.
Really? Wow.
My dad was the oldest. My grandfather was the oldest. And my great-grandfather was the oldest.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, here's the thing. I am both the oldest and the youngest in my family.
Very prestigious. That means you're an only.
Yep. And I know what everyone's thinking. Spoiled rotten, only child. Of course, Tony Shore is an only child. But hey, I'm in good company. Robin Williams, only child. A lot of great, especially
a lot
comedians.
of successful people are only children.
A lot of comedians are only children too. It's interesting.
Well, that makes sense. You had to be self-entertaining.
Yeah. And then some great comedians that come from, it's weird. It's either only children or huge families, like Bill Murray was one of, I forget how many, 6 or 7.
And I bet he was the youngest.
No,
I don't know that for sure.
He was a middle child, actually, I think.
That makes sense, too.
Yes, it does. Yeah, it does. Well, Barbara, I know that last week we had an amazing conversation about federal benefits and specifically about TSPs, right?
Yep, we focused on TSP, but there's so much to TSP. There was no way that we could get that rolled into one podcast. For those of you that think I'm talking about weird measurement abbreviations, what we're actually talking about is the Thrift Savings Plan.
You stole my joke. I was going to say we're not talking about teaspoon. It's not an abbreviation for teaspoon. It's actually Thrift Savings Plan or Thrift Saving Plan.
Remember, I was a baker in a former life. So.
Oh, TSP. You know what that is.
I do.
Well, really quick to refresh before we jump into what you want to talk about today. I know we mentioned it last week, but what is a thrift savings plan and who out there is affected by that?
The Thrift Savings Plan is the government employee equivalent of a 401k or a 403b plan. It is your defined contribution retirement plan. Has nothing to do with a pension that you earn as a federal employee, and is separate from that completely. Now, right now, if you are hired on as a federal employee, you're going to automatically be enrolled at 3% of your salary, where they're going to deduct that and put that into your thrift savings plan. Your agency will match up to 5%, with 1% of that being an automatic contribution. So if you elect, and you have to fill out paperwork to say, I don't want to participate in TSP.
But why would you do that?
Good question. Really good question. I mean, why would you participate at less than 5% when they're going to match that dollar for dollar? That's a guaranteed 100% return on your money.
Yeah, it's free money, basically.
It is.
It's really the only place, and they always say there's no free lunch, but that is the one place and the only place you're going to get truly free money is by getting the match. Now, for our listeners out there that aren't federal employees, Barbara, what we're talking about here is very similar to a 401k, but for federal employees.
Right. And the core funds that a federal employee can invest in TSP are G, F, as in Frank, C, S, as in Sam, and I, the International Fund. The G Fund is strictly government bonds. And this year is probably going to end up paying somewhere between 3 and 4% in interest, which isn't bad considering that the last few years when interest rates were super, super low, it was paying well under 2% for many years.
Well, the bond market overall took a huge hit last year.
It did. As opposed to the C Fund, which emulates the Standard & Poor's 500 stock index, the S&P 500. Now, over the last 11 years, the C Fund has averaged just under 14% in returns. And guys, that number is from the beginning of 2023. I haven't gone out and recalculated anything. So for those of you that are like super watching my numbers and are really, really close about things, understand that that number is from like January. So don't call me and say, no, it was this number.
Yeah, we're speaking in generalities.
Speaking in generalities, and I'm not giving anybody investment advice because as a fiduciary, I need to find out more information about you before I can give you direct advice.
We're just telling you this to give you an idea of where it's been and future future results aren't necessarily tied to past results, just because, you can look at the stock market for the last 100 years and 73% of the years it's gone up. Right. So
a little bit over 74, I think.
Oh, 74. So are in that area. So that's a good thing. That's why people invest in the market, but there's nobody has a crystal ball here. Right.
Nope. But something that we didn't get to talk about last week is something called the life cycle funds with TSP, with thrift savings.
Life cycle fund. What is that?
The life cycle funds are compilations of those 5 core funds, G, F, C, S, and I. Mm-hmm. They have target dates going out to 2065. And they're like every 5 years, I think, or every 10 years. Anyway, with those, TSP is actually adjusting your investment portfolio based on how far away or how close you are to retirement. And the closer you get to retirement, the less they pull out of the more aggressive, and I use that term loosely.
Sure.
Okay, because risk comes in all different shapes and sizes.
Sure.
But the closer you get to that retirement target date, the more they are investing in the G fund, because the G fund really doesn't go backward. It might not make much money, but the likelihood of you going backward and losing money is very, 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 very slim. Okay?
Yep.
Now, the other thing to take into account is that they're doing this reallocating for you strictly based on your age. They don't go in and say, oh, this is John's risk tolerance, so this is how we need to reallocate his TSP. This is Mary's risk tolerance, so we're going to do this instead of doing what we did with John.
Right.
Okay, so even though they're creating the illusion of actually managing your TSP account for you, I would argue to say that it's not really the case, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, interesting.
And, there are people that definitely want to go into that set it and forget it mode. And if you're curious about what set it and forget it looks like for your thrift savings plan, depending on your age and your risk tolerance, please reach out to us at anchoryourretirement.com or give us a call at 913-553-6222. And I'm going to ask you guys, the team, to put in the show notes for this one a link to our Color of Money risk analysis that I've talked about before.
Yes.
It's 11 questions, take you between 5 and 10 minutes with no wrong answers, give you a number somewhere between 1 and 100 that says, hey, this is what your risk tolerance or your risk comfort level is at this point in time in your life. And then we can work on allocating your TSP to line it up with your risk tolerance, if that makes the most sense.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Yep. So the Color of Money is I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a great way, just a simple 11 question questionnaire that you can fill out and get a score that will tell you kind of where you're at as far as your attitude toward risk and your ability to handle risk. And then you can look, I know you pull up their portfolios and say, or their retirement plans and their savings, say, well, here's how your assets are allocated, right?
Yes, because it really is all about covering your assets, right?
Right. So to speak.
And last but not least, the thing that I want to touch on with TSP is when they moved over to the new servicer in June of 2022, they started offering something called the mutual fund window. Okay. And that is approximately somewhere between 4,500 and 5,000 different mutual funds that you can invest in through your TSP. However, there are some rules around the mutual fund window. First of all, you can put no more than 25% of your TSP into the mutual fund window. Second, you have to go in there with a minimum of $10,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Third, there are additional fees and costs associated with the mutual fund window that you only pay if you participate in the mutual fund window. Okay. There is an annual maintenance fee.
Wow.
There is another fee that is paid on an annual basis. And the thing that gets me the most is that there is a $27.95 charge per trading fee.
Wow.
Okay.
So all this to say, it sounds like it doesn't sound very appealing, and it sounds too complex. Like there's a lot of rules.
It's very complex. And not only do you have those fees, which one of the fees is like $80 or $90 a year. I don't have it in front of me, and I slept last night, but not enough, and don't have these memorized because I'm usually quoting it off of a slide.
Sure.
And then there's one of the other fees is like $50 or $60 a year. And then the $27.95 every time you make a trade. Now, even when TD Ameritrade back in the day was charging for trades or E-Trade, it was $6 to $9 a trade, not $27.95 a trade. And on top of that, you also have to pay the fees or the loads, that's the correct word for it, for each mutual fund that you decide to go into. So you could be spending up to another 5% on top of those trading fees to invest in those specific mutual funds. And out of those 5,000 mutual funds that are available, there are probably less than 10 or 15 of them that actually outperform the C fund, which you can get into.
Which is the S&P 500, basically.
Right. And you get into that for a very minimal fee compared to what the mutual fund window has available.
Yeah. And you have to really look at that. And I know that a lot of people for a while, mutual funds, that's the way to go. But you're right. I mean, obviously the S&P 500 has done fairly well, and that seems to be the standard now. Mm-hmm. However, everybody's situation is different, but the C fund, which is basically tied to that or mirrors that for the most part, that's really, that's probably a good way to go for a lot of people, depending.
Yeah. And because I want to be accurate, I pulled up the fees while you were talking.
Okay.
It's a $55 annual administrative fee, a $95 annual maintenance fee, and I was wrong about the trading costs. It's $28.75 per trade.
Wow.
So it's even higher than what I said.
Yeah. Even worse, right?
Even worse.
Yeah. And people don't like fees, and there's a reason. They can add up, and it's just a lot of times, they can be overlooked. So you think you have this going on and it's only costing you this, and you're making this, but you're not taking into account fees. I know that certain variable annuities are that way, where the fees can be high and people don't realize it. So you don't want to get into the wrong thing. Now, sometimes these things have their purpose for some people, right?
I mean, if I'm paying a fee, I want to know that there's a value associated to it.
Right.
I don't mind paying a fee to my car mechanic to take care of my car because he does a better job at it than I do. I don't mind paying my doctor a fee to diagnose me correctly and help me figure out what's going on. But to pay a fee just for the sake of having something open and taking a look at it and really taking a wild guess at whether or not something is going to outperform where you're already invested. And, the thing about those core funds within TSP is that the fees for those 5 core funds are very low, comparatively speaking.
Yeah.
TSP is really, for retirement, one of the greatest accumulation tools out there. It's a great place to grow your retirement nest egg.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what you want to do. You want to grow that nest egg, protect that nest egg. But the bottom line here, Barbara, is you shouldn't be doing any of this without the advice of a financial professional, a fiduciary, somebody who's looking out for your best interests, correct?
Right. I would hate to see somebody open up the mutual fund window because they think that they're going to do better for themselves.
Yeah.
And you've got to realize that you've got to overcome all of those fees and costs just to get back to zero before you actually start making more money.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. And so there's a lot to this. I mean, we can get deep in the weeds on a lot of these topics, TSPs, matches, the different funds involved. When you started reading them off, I'm like, well, she's just saying letters now. I mean, you're just various alphabet. It's alphabet soup. Right?
It is. But if anybody's got questions, I would encourage them to go to our website. We are going to be offering some complimentary webinars over the next few weeks where we're going to teach federal employees about their benefits, not only the thrift savings plan, but health insurance, life insurance, Medicare, and how that integrates in with your pension. Social Security, and when it makes the most sense to take it, whether or not, if you're a civilian federal employee who served time in the military, but you're not collecting a military pension, does it make sense to buy back your military time? What does credited service look like? If you're younger and think that you may need to consider going out on disability, we cover some of those rules too. So we should have links to register to those webinars up on our website, or if not, they can reach out to us through the contact form on our website or call us and we can get them set up for one of those webinars as well.
Oh, that sounds great. And that's a great opportunity for our listeners out there. And I know there's no cost, but you got to get signed up. So how do they do that? What's the web address and the phone number?
You go to anchoryourretirement.com. Okay. And hopefully the upcoming events tab on our website is updated, but there's a lot going on. So no guarantees that it's there 100%. Okay. If you don't see what you're looking for, please call our office at area code 913-553-6222. And if you go to the appointment and scheduling prompt, Christina or another member of our team will be more than happy to set you up for one of those webinars at a time that's convenient for you.
That's awesome, Barbara. Give that number one more time.
Sure. It's area code 913-553-6222.
Or anchoryourretirement.com, right?
Yep, I love that.
All right. I do too. Well, it's the name of the show as well. And Barbara, great show today. We're going to wrap it up. And listeners, thanks for tuning in. That does it for today's episode of Anchor Your Retirement.
See you soon.
Thank you for listening to Anchor Your Retirement. Don't pay too much for taxes or retire without a sound retirement plan. For more information, please contact Barb Gulin at Safe Harbor Financial Planning Group. Call 913-553-6222 or visit them online at anchoryourretirement.com.
Advisory services are offered through Safe Harbor Financial Planning Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor in the state of Kansas. All matters discussed during the show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources and no representations can be made as to its accuracy. All ideas and information should be discussed in detail with one of our qualified representatives prior to implementation. We are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration, the Federal Medicare Program, or any other government agency. Calling this number will direct you to a licensed sales agent.